Welcome to this breaking news. Beware, this story, as all the other stories about the Yellow Menace in Canton, will be horrific. Another attack by the rubber dogs. Outside of the wonderful eatery, D&E Pizza, owned by the wonderful Chris Albert, the man who not only runs the best mediocre chicken and palm place in Canton, but also serves on its select board, was once again harassed by the Yellow Menace. People who had been at the neighboring establishment left rubber ducks with the terroristic writing FKR on it. We all know Chris Albert as an outstanding member of community. He might only once or twice have yelled at people, threatened people, harassed people in their minds, because Chris would never ever do such a thing. And his apologies at the Canton Select Board was deeply, deeply heartfelt. And I thank him for the courage he had to do what's right. Luckily, after this heinous attack on his person again, we were able to interview the crack detective on the case, Mr. Yuri Bukaknik. Bukaknik, of course, is the best detective the MSP have. Always ready to go on house calls to talk to people who break the law, because in Canton, the First Amendment is not existent. Everything they can swing into a charge against people for harassment, they will, because that's the law. But Canton is lucky to have a man like Bukaknik. And as he told in this interview that we taped earlier, let's see how he went on with his investigation. Sorry, I think we had the interview mixed up with a video he sent to me for private background checks. But I can tell you that 30 pages have been dropped about the interview he had with the perpetrators of this almost violent attack on Chris Albert. This mom, housewife who had left the Yellow Menace outside of the D&E Pizza got a house call from Yuri Bukaknik, because some will say it's to intimidate everyone and try to protect the Alberts family, but that's not true. Yuri is doing this for the good of Canton. He is the protector of the law, even though some people don't see that. He is the best of the best. But doing this interview as a follow-up on the heinous crimes that he witnessed on Chris Albert's establishment, where you might, if you find the video on Twitter, hear Chris Albert being horrified about what was done outside of his establishment. We also have the video where someone wrote "Free Karen Reed" on their own window, and he stands in there and says, in the most the shock and horror way, "Loser, loser, loser," because Chris Albert was very afraid. But this mom, when she's interviewed by Yuri, she's like, what the F is going on? And he tries to spin this into some massive attack on Chris Albert, because leaving one of the little Yellow Menace outside is clearly to intimidate him against witnessing. because in Massachusetts they have that crazy law that everything you say can, will, to anyone who might ever be a witness is harassment, which is a crazy law. But Yuri puts the screws on her and say, "Well, why did you do it?" And she said, "Well, I found another dog at the waterfall bar, and I thought it was just something people did. I left them other places." But Yuri don't believe nothing. So he keeps going on and on. And he describes Chris Albert as an outstanding gentleman for doing his civic duties. It's kind of, if you can find Turtle Boy have shared this as well, but it feels to me like he's trying to intimidate this lady. And when her husband comes in and says, "How is this not a First Amendment thing? How is this not something we are allowed to do?" Because when Chris Albert came running out of his shop, videotaping people outside on the sidewalk, which is public, he's allowed to do that, but we're not allowed to do that. Well, this is because this is harassment when he's a witness. And they asked a good question. Exactly how are you intimidated by a dog? Well, people not involved in case doesn't understand it. So the messaging on the dog and leaving it in front of the business, and no one came to your house, did they? And let's just say the yellow menace has gotten out of hand. Luckily, Yuri is on the case because he is trying to tell people to grow up and move on. And it doesn't work because Turtle Boy continues to harass people, continue to intimidate people, and continue to call people repeatedly. It's just, there's a reason why we're here. Believe me, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I know you people are probably wonderful people, and you just got caught up in the hysteria, the media of it, the exposure of it. And when we see stuff on TV, we kind of get desensitized to it, not realizing they're real people, real life, and they have emotions. They have life of their own that have been extremely intruded upon, and so they feel attacked. They feel like their civil liberties have been violated by all of the hoopla flying around it. You know, if you had people protesting in front of your house, how would you feel, right? And the person asked, as a reasonable person do, "I understand that, but again, I did not do that on his property, and I did not even know that when I put the dog down that it was his property. That's my honest to God. I don't know what else I can say." No, you answered my questions. I appreciate your time. I hope my answers were, adequate for you guys, but just what we have to do, because we have to enforce the law and maintain order and civil order and in our society, because if we don't, the next episode of, I'm not saying with this case, but the next episode that happens will be 10 times worse because nothing was done right now. And you wouldn't want to be on the other side of this thing as a victim, never mind a witness that just witnessing a crime taking place, testify to that crime, and then being harassed and intimidated. Funny enough, Chris Albert didn't testify to any crime taking place or anything in that case. His testimony was, "I was the bestest of friends with John O'Keefe, didn't have his number, might have harassed him a little bit with videotapes, pictures outside of his house, called him Mr. Something because he yelled at my son." So he'd never testified to a crime because he wasn't there, according to him. Maybe his son Colin was, but we will never know because they shut that down real fast. But sad for little Bukaknik. He has to do this job to try and fight for the next case. It's but he will keep going and will take it to court because if the court deems there's enough for charges to be brought, they will. And but he hopes that from their little conversation, they took something away from it. I know I always like to take something away from each conversation that I have with people, and we'll go on from here. You take the side of Chris Albert, an absolute moron, and you go to interview people to harass them on behalf of Chris Albert, and now you hope to protect the future. How the F are you paying taxes in Massachusetts for this idiot? Listen, you're not taking the fall for other people's actions. You would never do that. I will never do that to you. Okay, I would never put forward charges because someone else did something. But as an adult, you have to realize that you're part of a group of people. You didn't do the picketing. You didn't do the harassing phone calls. You didn't do the sending of messages. You didn't do the sending of mail. But you left that dog with a clear and concise message of FKR, free Karen Reed, on the dock. So you have very, very small portion of this, but it's the totality of it. These people have been enduring this for since April of last year. Warrantless harassment, you know. And if your loved ones were put in, you know, in that scenario, I think you would feel differently about it, you know. And I'm not blaming you. I get it. It's very easy to get caught up in social media, the hoopla of it all, the sensationalization. I don't know, aspect of it. You're like, yeah, it's on every podcast, on every news channel, but those are real life that's being affected. Why the F is a police officer crying about that? It's so stupid. It's so absolutely stupid. And funny enough, he says, well, the court system is backed up, so maybe in 2 and 3 months. What else happens in 2 and 3 months? Karen Reed's second case if they choose to bring it. So, luckily enough, we can intimidate all these people who try to put focus on free Karen Reed by threatening them with court. At what point is this a civil rights issue? At what point do you lose your right to support a lady who is innocently being harassed by the police because there is no evidence she hit John O'Keefe? At what point will the MSP see how stupid this is? And sending the whiny dancer out there to try and intimidate people to shut the F up. See, I tattooed my dog with free Karen Reed as well. Maybe Bukaknik will come to me if Chris Albert ever sees this and gets harassed by it. Canton, I'm sorry this is what you have to live with. I try to make it a funny video about the dogs, but you have a whiny detective going around intimidating people to stop putting the rubber dogs on public property. Now it's littering, which is a fine and a good day. And because of your stupid law, you can call it harassment. I really hope that there will soon be new brooms to sweep the streets of Canton instead of this Pollock.